Hello, Ayush. Hey, Alex, what's up?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
I, I
Sanket,
mean,
wait,
usually,
Sanket, before you start,
sure,
today is my day to introduce.
got
So,
it.
guys, today, after a long time, we have a really special guest. That is partly because he agreed to be also on our podcast. So, he's a really special guest, and he's somebody who I've known for, I think, 2 weeks, Alex, now, not more than that, maybe
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks. Very thankfully turned up for one of the meetings, the only person who turned up for. Also, shout out to Vernon if he's watching this. He's my co-facilitator in the meetings. So, Alex and me study in the same university, Loughborough University in the UK. And you can tell by his room and my room, who is finding it more difficult to adjust into the university. Let's all in the open. So, Alex, I'll leave it up to you to introduce yourself, and then we can get right into it.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Alex, and I'm at Loughborough. I'm doing architecture engineering, so it's a blend of civil engineering and architecture. And I guess my bit of this podcast is going to be explaining dyslexia and possibly some of the misconceptions that I found in India.
Mhm.
And also misconceptions that I found in England, because it's still not exactly perfect.
Mm.
And apart from that, they were all talking about some controversial stuff, weren't we? And
Yes,
Jordan
yes.
Peterson and
That is later. That is later.
yeah, but yeah, that's who I am.
Basically,
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight this. Usually, when we start off with a podcast, we're like very high in energy. I'm like, hey, Ayush, what's up? But like today, as we have a guest around, we were pretty sober this time. So just wanted to highlight that.
No. We can. Alex is not a guest here. Alex is
Sure.
part of the.
There's
So,
a
Alex,
little bit of nerves going about.
yeah. So I think
Whenever
Alex,
I start filming for YouTube, it's
Oh.
always like you start filming in a
Yeah.
while and you're just like timid.
Yeah. By the way, Alex also has a YouTube channel,
Okay.
and where Alex has told this to me that I think he told this to me last week or something that he had gone out vlogging in the campus and he was feeling very weird.
Yeah.
Something
Vlogging
that I
on his
asked
own.
Ayush to do, but he didn't do it.
Why? And the reason
Oh.
was that day lockdown, the COVID. This was back in December. So when I
Yeah.
was going back to India, so that was the time when COVID started again coming up. So I just was safe by nature.
I have
I'm
to say,
not-
like,
I'm not-
vlogging around it's one of the most awkward things you can do.
Really?
You
Fair.
have you have so many people looking at you, and you're just going, yeah, I'm just videoing myself.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Bro,
yeah.
this is the thing which is happening in England, right? Can you imagine what happens in India where
No, but
technologies?
I recommend you to search one guy who's a shameless vlogger. His name is Tanmay Bhatt in India.
Yes.
So you should search him up. Anyways,
Sure.
coming to Alex, because we shouldn't be talking that much. Generally, I am more guilty of talking a lot, so I'll keep quiet. So, Alex, coming to your story, man. I know your story about how this whole dyslexia aspect and how actually by reading, inculcating the habit of reading, you actually improved a lot.
Mm.
So just start off, man, from the beginning, how you discovered that you may have dyslexia and how you were treated in school or different methods and all that. So yeah, just shoot off. Just start.
Well, yeah, if we go like all the way back, it'd be primary school, and primary school is very difficult because obviously kids are developing, so it's difficult to tell what was going on. But having a twin, my parents started to notice that there was some strong differences between me and my brother, and they'd go to the teacher and say, look, what's happening, and they'd say a very like typical response would be that I was slower, I was basically less bright than my brother.
Mm-hmm.
My parents they weren't necessarily against that, but they definitely weren't for it, because they were really confused by it. Really, they looked at me, they looked at my brother, they thought we were both quite pretty bright. We could both do the same things. I would pick up things very, very quickly, reading, maths, whatever it was. But after I had left the lesson, whatever, I would forget it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd forget it.
Okay.
It'd be tricky to remember. And then when it came to the next class, I'd struggle again. Then obviously my twin wouldn't have that problem. And then you have to sort of move about sort of 8 years later, and I was in year 8 at school. I'm 12 years old, and I keep underperforming, despite teachers saying that I understand things very quickly, I was still underperforming. And eventually I get sort of called into an office and they say, we'd like you to maybe go to the special needs. We'd like you to see if there's anything that could be done to help you. And from that, I get a psychologist and they diagnosed me with dyslexia, which is for a lot of kids was quite a horrendous moment. To be honest, I wasn't that phased. It was better to know that I wasn't. It was very confusing because I thought I was quite a bright guy, and then I wasn't doing very well. So it was better to know, and then I thought, oh, okay, fair enough. That's why I'm struggling.
Because when you don't have the idea that there is an obstacle, then it gets really hard, right? So knowing that is important. Correct. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Dyslexia is a really broad term. It describes an awful lot. It's like engineering. It describes an awful lot, and there's many different variations of symptoms and things that people struggle with that can accumulate to be described as dyslexia. Mine particularly is short-term memory. So I can go into a class, learn what it is, but then that process of it coming into my long-term memory was a lot weaker.
Got it.
But then there are dyslexia traits such as we process things through the right hemisphere of our brain, which is more creative. And that then, due to weaker neural pathways, basically means that you struggle more when you come to logic and maths and whatnot.
Got it.
So they're like the dyslexia traits, and that's why where I struggle in my dyslexia. But
So,
sorry.
Yeah. No. Carry on.
So it then really sort of moves on to nothing changes. Nothing changes when you find out you're dyslexic. It's not like you go, oh, brilliant. Now I'm going to get extra time and all this kind of stuff. Things are still the same, because to me, it's relative. To me, learning and my learning experience, I can't imagine it being different to yours, even though it must be. It's just like people say, "Oh, it must be so hard."
It's all normal for you.
People often say, "Oh, it must be hard being dyslexic," but I've never known anything different to that.
Got it. Because
so
to be very fair, as you said, dyslexia is a very broad term, right? So, what's the best possible way to define dyslexia? How do you define it? Because, as you said, as an Indian, culture plays an important role in telling you what something means. Because, for example, if I don't know the proper definition of dyslexia, I understand the term through movies, through music, anything, right?
And I'll tell you one more thing. As you said, culture plays a part, and why I'm correlating is that I'm getting to the point that you were told that you need a special needs assistant or somebody to get into. Back in India, okay, first of all, I'm not generalizing anything or things have changed. But generally, and it's true, at times if a parent sees that their child is dyslexic in India, such is the taboo that they hide it to the world.
Yes.
They hide it. They say ki this is not normal, or this is something I'm not looking at, or they just correlate it to child being dull and not bright enough.
I think it is treated just like any other mental disability or disorder, right?
And you said, because like Alex said also, that dyslexic people actually are very creative by nature.
Fair.
Extremely creative by nature on a general basis because of the hemisphere.
Got it.
But that is not taken into account. So that is, Sanket, you will agree to me, that is an interesting point, that he was actually not put down or anything. He was just
said, exactly.
You are different, and we accept you like that. You are
right,
like that.
Right. Yeah, basically, there are facilities provided to actually address what is happening, and not just discard the reality, right? When I was talking about culture, there's a movie called Tare Zameen Par. It's about a kid who's dyslexic, right? And we got to know about dyslexia through that movie, and now we think that dyslexia is basically not understanding letters. That's it, right? So that is why I wanted to know what dyslexia actually means.
There are. Do you remember? Sorry, just one thing. Do you remember the scenes in the movie?
Exactly, where just dancing.
It is shown that it is shown that the guy is a kid of 7-8 years old. It's way back in 2007, I think the movie released.
I don't know.
Yeah. So he's seeing the letters and they're dancing.
Mhm.
Letters are dancing
Right.
in front of him. So that is
Yeah,
shown.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, continue.
No, I think that probably the best way I could describe dyslexia is that like simply it's someone else learns in a different method to you.
Got it.
Exactly.
It's
Very, very important.
So it's
Very
just a
like
important.
different
where
method, not an obstacle. Are you trying to say that?
Yeah.
yeah, the obstacle is formed by the fact that obviously the majority of people learn in one way. So
Okay.
schools and
Okay, so
universities will teach.
the structure of education is made according to one conventional way.
Yeah,
And if you're
exactly.
dyslexic, you have to choose the other way around which the structure is not there.
Yeah, precisely.
Got it.
And it's difficult because you have to, you can't just like avoid school. You have to go to
Fair.
school, you have to go to university. And if you're going to go, then that means that you're going to be learning or forced to learn in a way that
Yes.
doesn't help you.
Right.
That's where the obstacle really forms.
Got it.
Dyslexia in itself, I don't really see as much of an obstacle. In fact, I think it's in many ways quite a blessing.
Okay.
Because you think differently. And
Sure.
there's also so those neural pathways in which some might say you have slightly weaker neural circuits can all be strengthened.
Got it.
I mean, at A level I did physics, maths, and design and technology, and I was never impeded by my dyslexia in those. And in English and reading and things like that, I read every day. Last year I read 21 books.
That's
I
great.
try and read a book every 2 weeks. So I try and sort of cut that idea of a stereotype of a dyslexic being
Exactly.
unable to read and unable to do maths and learn.
So like,
Sanket, it's just one thing. Sanket, have you read 21 books in your lifetime?
No, bro, not at all, bro.
I haven't read. I have read 2 to 3 books in my life.
I think I have read only
Unmatched.
6 books total.
Yeah, a bit more than 21 books. See, that is a really interesting point. Fighting against that.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sanket, you were saying something.
I mean, I wanted to ask if reading books actually helps you fight dyslexia in some way or the other. Like, does it help
absolutely.
you form a base? Like, it does. I think it's like training or something, like working out, training your muscles.
For absolutely everyone. Firstly, everyone learns differently, and everyone's brain is different.
Yeah.
And depending on what you do, you'll develop and strengthen your brain in certain aspects in different ways. So if you, like me, you read a lot, then eventually reading becomes pretty easy. It's no bother. If you do maths every day, maths becomes easier.
Fair.
But yeah, reading definitely does. And one of the first things that I did to try and sort of combat the dyslexia and some of the disadvantages that come with it was just pick up a book and start trying to read it. And I have to say, at first it was difficult, and I felt the side effects of dyslexia. However, after that book, I then read another, and things got a little bit easier. And then I read another one, and then that got easier. And eventually, the first year that I started doing that, I'd read 9 books that year. The second year was last year, and I read 21 books. This year, we're going to go for about 30.
That's great.
So at what number will you stop, Alex? Just give me that.
I'm not gonna stop. Why will you stop?
Not until I'm reading every hour.
But is it okay? A bit off topic, but is it? Do you have a particular favorite genre or something which you like read, or just what? Or like, did you start reading of like books which are a bit light or not very, or did you just random book?
No, well, I read an author called Bill Bryson. Do you guys know him?
No.
He has like he's an American author, and he loves England. And so he went around touring all like small villages in England and like wrote about it. And that's very easy reading. It's got a lot of humor in it. And because of that humor, it's enjoyable to read. So it sort of perpetuates you to keep going through the book, and then encouraged me to keep going. After that, I read something called The Marshmallow Test, which is a psychology book. I read The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, which is by Edgar Allan Poe, and that's a famous American author and poet. So I started to read sort of heavier stuff quite quickly because it's those things that interest you. So when I was getting into reading, I was definitely more sort of favoritism. It was like, I like that genre. I like learning about this. I'm going to read that. Now that I can read, pretty well, very, quite quickly. I tend to mix it up. So at the moment, like I'm going to read some Greek mythology. I've got some maths, like Fermat's last theorem.
If you mind, can you show us your book collection? Can you show us your book collection?
Wait here. So like I've always got like a pile of books that I like need to read. I always go to charity shops and like buy them. I've got a Kindle as well.
I really hope my mother doesn't see this episode. What if she does? She's gonna go after me because she's after me to read books. I think Sanket will also have the same problem.
We've got Storm in a Teacup, so that's a physics book and it explains the physics of everyday life. We've got Leo Tolstoy, he's a famous Russian author, and it's meant to be like one of the best plays in the world. We've got Heroes by Stephen Fry, so that's a bit of Greek mythology, and I read at the start of this year Troy, which is a really good read. We've got How to Build a Universe, so that's by Brian Cox and Robin Ince, and they ran a podcast, and that's a very easy book to read. It's probably aimed at maybe like late teens. It's really nothing anyone can pick up that book and read it. But sometimes I like to just throw in a light book like that and then read that, And then we've got like Fermat's Last Theorem because. I don't know. I like maths, and why not?
So yes, what I can see is that you have a good mix of like
multiple
informative books,
right?
Books as well as leisure reading.
Correct. I mean, first of all, like this is for anyone out there. Like if you want to start reading books, start by humor, because I think I take that as an advice, because like if it's very interesting or it's humorous, if it's funny, right, you enjoy reading, and then you can gradually move to deeper, more stronger concepts, right? So I think that helps
absolutely
everyone.
Even if it's something that you enjoy, like psychology or economics, if it's a heavy book, if it's like a 500-page book, it can even your most favorite beloved topics can get boring.
Precisely, yeah.
And so if there's a bit of humor in there, if the writing's light, then it can keep you moving through the book very
sure. Now, like I would like to talk about something you mentioned before. Like you said that dyslexia was as a blessing for you, right? Because it gave you another path, right? So my question to you is like, did it help you form a nuanced understanding or nuanced perspective around the world? Do you try to try to understand an alternate way of understanding topics, like consciously, right? Even though you think that this is
I have like a perfect example.
I have one addition to this question, similar. Okay. Is that also because you told me this? I just want to tell the audience also. Is that the different ways you learned in that phase? You told me, I think last week you told me that how you learned in a different manner, the specific ways of learning. So I think it's linked. So
in terms of like the nuance of like looking at things and like looking at problems, that's always interesting, because I had a maths tutor for my GCSE maths, like when you're about 15, you sit in your exams. And
GCSE maths, which is like Sanket, are 10 board exams.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Is that what you have in India?
Yeah, we have board exams.
So we have 10 board exams. I think the A levels you guys have is that 12 board exams. And GCSE, if I might be wrong, but what I'm gauging is the 10 board exams. Sanket,
yes, exactly. That is
right. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Well, I was sitting the equivalent of those exams, and I had a maths tutor, and we would do maths problems, and I would always do them in a very, very different way to my brother, despite there not being too many ways that you might be able to do the question. But I would always do them in a very odd fashion, and my tutor would always go, "I don't know why I've done that, but it works." And I go, "Yeah, it works."
Yeah.
And then just on Friday, I was in a lecture, and I was doing some programming for my course, and they were like, the tutor was coming around expecting the code, and he looked at mine and he went, I don't know. You have to do it like this. And he started like reading the code, and he went, "Oh no, actually that's perfect. That works."
Yeah,
it's just that's in a very different way,
right?
And it was like every other kid in the class had done it in one way, And then I had done it in a completely other way.
So basically, it has opened doors to innovation, right? Like you can always be innovative in your own way and
Yeah.
possibly find something very unique,
And
something very
importantly
interesting.
is that no way is right or wrong. It is what suits you, and it is what
Fair,
suits you to
100%.
you have to get the result. But yeah, Alex, if you talk about the methods you did in school to
Yeah. So
study,
learning,
yeah,
you
learning,
know,
yeah.
so when my experience was when I walked into class, I could walk in and I can't read very well off PowerPoints either. You're looking at the PowerPoint, you have to take in the notes, write them down. That was an awful process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would sort of panic for a while, and then at about 16, I like up until 16 years old, I probably just relied on like my intelligence. I sort of just was like, I'll make it through, because up till GCSEs I didn't find very tricky, which is like quite lucky for me, because some people definitely do. And then it got to A levels, and A levels I sort of felt the toughness coming in, and the sort of the struggles that I may have kick in. And so I thought, right, I've got to find a way to get around this. And I was watching a few YouTube videos, and I came across this guy who was he got like top in the med science at Cambridge.
Okay.
I was like, well, whatever that guy did seemed to work. And he was looking at a study, and it was on how to develop more memory cells while you revise. And effectively, all you do is active recall. You write down loads of questions during the lecture, and when you get home from that lecture, you can either make flashcards or do whatever, but you ask yourself those questions. And doing that is a lot more effective than note taking. So I started doing that and found that was incredibly helpful, because obviously my problem was memory.
Yes.
And so now I rely on a flashcard app. I think I've got probably well over 1,000 questions in there. And I do half an hour of those every day, because it means that I'm prepared pretty much for an exam every day. When it comes to exams, like my revision is just touching up on terminology, a bit of this, bit of that, practicing questions, and then that's sort of it.
I mean, so basically you have become very proactive in your daily life. So in the end, you just have to revise stuff, right? Not go through it again and again. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was probably one of the main things. It was, it was reading to try and overcome that obstacle. It was doing the active recall, because that removes challenges in class. It was just finding methods that worked for me to overcome the sort of traditional method of learning, and going, okay, well, everyone else can take notes, but I'm going to write questions down instead. So I never bother taking a notepad to lectures, because it'd just be like useless to me. It's like it's like bringing a hot dog. So I'm not going to need that.
So So like, did discussing what happened in the lecture with somebody or a friend actually, I think it was really more of a benefit to you, like
discussing it with a friend.
Like auditory learning.
It's okay. Yeah, like a lot of the time teaching it to myself, like sometimes I sound like a crazy person, because I'm sure like some of my roommates are standing outside my door going, what the hell is he talking about? But I'm in my room just talking to myself, going, vectors, the product rule, we're going to do this. But that helps, trying to pretend that you're a student and you're trying to teach it to a student or something. That helps a lot.
That's great, bro. I mean, okay, now we got to know like what is the process of learning after you're diagnosed, right? But personally, I feel before getting diagnosed, right, diagnosed with dyslexia, it can be a very traumatizing experience for the child.
Absolutely.
Because first of all, cultural taboos. Apart from that, you have no idea what is happening, right? Why do you social, cultural, and apart from that, on a personal level, you don't understand why I'm not able to cope with what is happening, right? So I think that is a very very traumatizing experience for a child. And so can you describe that? What was that period like when you started with academics at the age of 8, like things got real, and then basically your life from 8 years old to 12 years old before getting
the social aspect majorly of it.
I think so. What was it like? Yeah, again, I've got a twin brother, so that was it. Didn't maybe introduce difficulty, but my parents definitely
Comparison.
sorry.
The comparison. He's
Comparison.
talking about the comparison.
Yeah. There was so even if you didn't want to, there was always sort of a subconscious
Sure.
comparing between me and my twin.
Sure.
And my twin would always on trend do better than me. I won't say how that then like has panned out later, but but yeah, no, on trend when we when we were younger.
I hope he watches.
he used to do better than me, and that was very tricky because
I like the ED that you added.
I like the used to, yeah. I read it.
Well, it's okay now. We do different subjects, I can't be a minute.
Yeah.
But
no, still you can have a nice competitive spirit with your brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am actually naturally very competitive. So that was tricky to sort of see my brother performing better and finding things easier. And of course you see your friends maybe performing better and finding things easier. And it can sort of induce like a bit of sort of a defeatist attitude where you go, well, I'm just screwed, so I won't try. And I think a lot of kids with dyslexia do employ that because it's a lot easier than finding different methods to learn. My parents, they were like really supportive. There was never a moment where my parents were like, oh, keep that quiet and keep that to yourself. My parents were like, you need to go get your extra time, you need to put more effort in, unfortunately that's how it is. You've just got to try harder. And I did. My friends, of course, there was always banter. But I never really minded,
Yeah.
That's a great attitude. That's a great attitude.
Sure.
Like sometimes my mate would like do maybe worse than me. I go, come on, I've got dyslexia and I did better than you in that. Like especially if we were learning a new language. We were doing German in year 8 and my mate did like way worse than me. And I said, I struggle with English and I did better than you.
Thank God. I was not your friend. Thank God. I would have been. Because I was really bad at languages myself.
So it like there was always a bit of banter about it, but no one really ever minded. I had a lot of friends. Well, I had a lot of friends. I'd meet people in learning support, but whenever I met people in learning support, people were always quite nihilistic, and they'd sort of go, "Oh, well, that's." I'm thick because I've got dyslexia, and so I can't do this and that. And I always thought that was so strange. I rather thought it's not the dyslexia, you're just thick, which may have been a bit cruel. But
which is true, man.
I never had much patience with those who like would use it as an excuse.
Yes, exactly.
It's not an excuse, you can.
That's
people with dyslexia, if there's one thing that any people watching in India who have dyslexia and watch this, it's that dyslexia is not something that can hold you back completely from any of your goals. You can achieve everything that anyone else can.
True.
It's not impossible at all.
Now talking about being truthful and sounding cruel, who at times sounding cruel, let me come to another person who's truthful, but people still call him cruel at times.
Oh, no.
Guys, first of all, clap for me for that nice link up.
Good job.
Yeah. So now coming to a person who is I won't say a hero for us, just because I think we have spoken about Alex and his story, and we have learned everything that we had to, and obviously before this podcast ends also we'll ask a couple of more questions, but before that let's talk a bit about Jordan Peterson. So Alex, so guys who do not know who Jordan Peterson is, just Google him up, and if you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, it's a shame on you.
No, if you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, I think we're safe.
Yeah, well, it's a shame on you also.
Yeah.
So yeah, Alex, if you want to talk a bit about, because see, I'll tell you, Sanket, both of us, Alex, this before this, me and Sanket have watched videos of Jordan Peterson. We have watched talks of Jordan Peterson, and the crowd we compared ourselves to was the Indian crowd who did not know who Jordan Peterson was.
Right.
So we thought that we are really, really good and we know Jordan Peterson. But
I'm
Sanket,
sure
let
you
me tell
do.
you. No, but Sanket, let me tell you, Alex has read, I think, 2 books of Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2 books. So Sanket, our this image won't work here. Okay, so let's not compete. So yeah, let's talk about let's talk a bit about Jordan Peterson, his ideologies, and I'll also share a story of mine, which I think both of you know about the party story. Sanket, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, but like
So
before we go to that, I would like to say like Alex have liking or being interested in Jordan Peterson is a sign of having a nuanced understanding of
yeah,
knowing that okay, uh, approaching a concept, there's no one way, there's an
mm,
alternate concept
yeah,
which is
yeah,
probably not very popular amongst people. It is
yeah,
probably
No.
hated by
exactly,
people. It is probably hated by
exactly.
people, but you don't have a
Mm.
problem with that. You try to understand that topic. You're not favoring that topic. You're just trying to
Mm.
understand the other side of the story. And
And yeah,
that is where
yeah,
probably the likelihood towards Jordan Peterson comes in.
Yeah,
mm,
definitely. Well, yeah, Jordan Peters, he's an interesting character, isn't he? Yeah,
mm,
we live in a world now where, I mean, thankfully, because we can do this, but we have heightened connectivity.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that with that connectivity, you sort of get this kinetic vibe of people building up arguments to become very, very extreme. So, like, extreme left
mm.
builds up, you have extreme right build up, and everywhere in between seems to get very, very angry.
True, true.
And there was sort of like a period in like 2016, 2015 where Jordan Peterson was joining in, well, not necessarily joining in the extremes, he was sort of just stating his views.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to see because it was like, it was like throwing a stick of dynamite into a pond. It was like, everything like blew up and there was just ripples everywhere across the internet of, have you seen this horrendous person?
True, true.
So like naturally, I was drawn to that. I was like, oh, I want to
So
know
wait,
what all the beef is
this
about.
one thing. You follow
Yeah.
him from that time, 2016.
Yeah.
We just got to know
Oh,
about it
really?
like
I think in
probably
lockdown. I got him in
2 years
lockdown
ago.
from
2 years ago. 2 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I probably really started getting interested in when I was about 16, so that's
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he's a very interesting character. I was drawn to him because I was wondering about what at the time he was talking about feminism, and I
Mm-hmm.
was wondering about what his views on feminism were. Yeah, his ideas are very complex and they can be misinterpreted in a lot of different ways.
Right.
So there are
lot of
groups
ways,
who,
but lot of ways, yeah.
yeah, there are groups who have taken his ideas and maybe twisted them. There are
Right.
people who see them as very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
There are things I think he says that I think are a bit odd, and I think that it could be changed. The best way that I've sort of found to like look at it is just sort of like really subjectively, like remove any sort of hate that people come in, because that's always really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
It always, like when people come about and they have really shallow opinions and they go, oh, I hate him because of like X, Y, and Z.
True.
It's like,
correct, because
but
probably
I
they
don't-
don't have the context of what he's actually talking about. They just
Yeah.
take something from the middle of the conversation and then they
Yeah.
form a whole idea around that.
And more
Yeah,
than that, I feel sometimes people are really sort of prejudiced to it. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's an interview, I forget which, there was a lady conducting it, I forget which.
it's a GQ interview. Is
The
it?
GQ interview, where if
Yeah.
you saw from the outset,
Mm-hmm.
see, if you see Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson have similar ideologies. Ben Shapiro is way, way more radical. But see, Ben Shapiro is on your face and rude. Jordan
Right.
Peterson is not rude
Right.
by his way of speaking. He speaks in a very nuanced
Sure.
and in a very polite manner.
Right.
So he was speaking like he was the GQ one. And as Alex has seen, Sanjay, you also might have seen, the lady was herself just aggressive from the onset. She was
Correct.
sort of interrogating him and attacking him. but
Just
interviewing him.
throwing down nice, like nice
So
in terms of words.
when people
Yeah, well,
have that
she set out with
mindset,
an agenda.
Yeah.
She
Right.
had
Exactly.
aims for that.
Correct.
interview to
I think
try and, like,
before the interview started, she probably thought, okay, I'm gonna attack this person, and that is my
And
sole motive,
and
right?
be a flag bearer of
Right,
like being
right.
woke or something.
Being woke. Correct.
Mm.
So I mean, this is how everyone approaches him, or anyone else who's to be very fair, this is not just about Jordan Peterson. This is about having a nuanced understanding. That is the main idea of this particular conversation. Uh,
Mm.
Anyone who's just trying to understand an alternate idea, which is not necessarily popular amongst people, they are critiqued heavily, and not just very healthy, not just in a very healthy way, but in a very rude and very discarding way. Like, okay,
Mm.
I don't agree with this idea. It hurt my ego, right? So I'm gonna,
Then it's wrong.
yeah, it's wrong, and probably this guy's
Please,
stupid.
please tell him the Katy Perry story also.
I don't remember. I'm
Uh,
sorry.
the one where she's lactose intolerant one, where she saw
Oh, not
the
Katy Perry. That's about Demi Lovato. So basically,
Demi
yeah,
Lovato. Sorry.
basically, she's I think she has some eating disorder, and yeah. So there was some lactose-free yogurt ad banner near a shop, and so because she was lactose intolerant or had an eating disorder, she found that offensive, and so she attacked a small shop owner, right? Very small shop owner, and the guy got cancelled, and he had
And he
massive
had to
losses
shut
during
down his shop
lockdown. And this is
during
during
lockdown.
lockdown, by the way. So like, guy
Yeah.
probably struggled or something. So
That tells you.
this is a very bad situation.
Well, there's there's cancel culture now, and again, the problem with the connectivity is everyone's reaction to things has to be very, very quick. You have to decide
Right.
what side you're on very, very quickly.
Correct.
Exactly.
And
That then
Exactly.
leads to people not actually developing their own opinions.
Right.
They sort of just like tag on to whomever else, or like the
Precisely.
majority. It's like, oh well, if everyone hates Jordan Peterson, I'm going to hate him too because
Yeah, right. Because like you form a very polarizing opinion about
Yeah.
everything. I think part of the problem is the structure of how Twitter is, right? You can only use 250 characters, which is not much. So within that character limit, you have to say something, and you can't have a very nuanced explanation about something in just 250 characters, right? So possibly that is part of the reason. But yeah, okay, carry on. Like, what do you guys think about it though? Like, do you think
I think it's one thing is before just one thing I'll say, and Alex, I'll ask you about this also. Don't you think that we are nowadays too forced upon to form an opinion and pick sides?
100%.
Like we necessarily don't always have to pick sides. Anybody who is radical or picks a side radically is somebody who's dumb. I feel that being in the middle is not that bad, because everybody has every aspect or every opinion has its positives and negatives, which is the reason why this whole Twitter thing with Sanket said, which comes, we have to form an opinion, we have to pick sides, we have to join a group, or we have to show that we care. So what's your take on this? Do you think that's actually true?
Yeah, well, everything's very divisive, and yeah, but I was gonna say, like, one of my first YouTube series was a series called Template, and it sort of morphed into a couple of things really. But the original idea behind it was saying that people had like these templated opinions where you could sort of pick them up and just punch in sort of random, probably incorrect facts.
Right.
And then go,
because no one wants to get unnoticed, right? Everyone wants to be like, okay, I exist, right? Here my opinion. This is my opinion.
Well,
I don't have proper understanding, but yeah, sure, take my opinion.
It forms into the sort of being woke, where everyone's like, I'm very aware of this problem. I know what's going on. And they sort of like have picked up this template from a few influencers, from the majority of what people may think. And often it's sort of like a security in numbers. People go, well, if there's 300, well, let's say there's like 300,000 dislikes on a video, well, they can't all be wrong. It's like, they could all be wrong.
Sure. Exactly.
Especially if they've all done a similar thing where they've gone, I'm going to follow this person. And so, like what I did to try and combat that, because I was probably subject to that, where I realized this from having done it, where I was following Jordan Peterson, but I was also following some of the more extreme groups that were interpreting what he was saying. And it was that was during feminism, and I was starting to go, oh yeah, feminism's getting ridiculous. What about this? What about that? And then I sort of got a bit older and a bit wiser, and I thought, I'm going to revisit that. And I read his first book again, and I thought, I understand what's going on in that book. And then I completely switched, and I read a very extreme, it's a very strong feminist book that had all sorts
so
of
basically the
arguments.
left. So any book like which supposed the left.
Yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that I supposedly had like a view from someone who's meant to be very, I don't know, extreme in one regard, and then a book from a very extreme way in another regard, and because
so
of
you
that,
just
it meant
got that balance, right? Otherwise,
exactly.
Got it.
And you could start to see like fundamental truths in both. You started to be able to actually like bring that together and bring that knowledge together. And it means that when I'm talking about feminism today and someone brings up a point, I can go, no, that's bollocks. Wait, am I allowed
So
to
you
swear?
had the
it's fine.
best of both worlds.
Okay.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Best of both worlds. And that's probably, that's probably what I would encourage people to read. But if you're not going to read, like maybe like, keep up with the news and this, that, and the other, because people are very woke, but
woke without any
is always,
information,
it always
right?
seems very shallow. Exactly.
Right,
It's always
right.
like they know about the issue, and then you ask them about
Everyone
the issue,
wants to talk about the issue without knowing the issue. I think that's the best way to put it, right?
Exactly.
I can actually give you an example before we wrap this up about me and Sanket have experienced about this whole woke and how. So basically, me and Sanket, if you go back to one of our, and for everybody, Sanket, please link the video also.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. So we had made a video on cancel culture,
Okay.
right? And this example is the perfect example of people picking sides. So we had made a video on cancel culture. I think we are back in Sanket.
I think this was
July,
our second video, if I'm not wrong.
which was shot twice.
Yeah, which was shot twice.
That's a controversial
Because-
subject to make your second video on.
Yeah, it was. No, I'll tell you what happened later on. Okay, I think it was shot back in July last year. We had shot it. So we edited, and our next video was supposed to be on LGBTQIA plus, and we were supposed to, and we had planned to bring this activist, very famous activist, who we had got a contact of, and he told us that
Not the person we actually made.
not the person we actually got.
Yeah.
So we did get. Let's be clarified. So we did get another person, Mr. Himadri Roy.
Yeah, which was I think which was probably one of those better.
Let's not. Yeah. Okay. One of the better.
Yeah.
So we got him actually at the end, but not the person we had initially contacted. So he told us, I want to go through your videos. So fair enough. So we had only 2 or 3 videos at that time.
Right.
So he said, so he checked our woke cancel culture video, and he said, because we've made a video on cancel culture, I can come on your show as somebody who's an activist. So I tried to debate with him, like argue with him, like, why won't you? It doesn't mean that I don't support this movement. He's like, no, I can't. So then after a point, we can't do it. So that's like, fair enough.
Wow.
So that's, as you said, the perfect example of picking sides and having a sense that if somebody XYZ is has a different opinion on one subject, it means they have a different opinion on every subject, which is remotely related to that. So that is the sad part about the whole issue.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and it actually disrupts, like actually any progress. If you want to, if there is problems in society, or if which there must be, society is definitely not perfect, but people talk loads of rubbish and saying, getting angry about things, and you're like, it's not actually helpful. You need to, we need to talk about it.
I said this earlier, like in that podcast, but like we have formed a society where cancel culture is no more a cancel culture, but it is a cancel cult, where you actually kill that person who you don't actually agree with, right? You're just very radical with that. So
this was a term I coined, but it's fine. Sanket stated.
I'll take
Anyways, so I think we have had a really, really nice conversation. Alex, lots to learn from you, man. Nice banter. Sanket,
okay, before ending it.
No, I'll also say something. You say something, then I'll also say I have to.
No, go ahead.
No, you say that, then I'll end it.
Okay. All right. So, okay, Alex, like any piece of advice which you'd like to give, right? For someone, like for parents, first of all, because if your child has a learning disability, right, or learning problem, before the child actually addressing it, the parents are supposed to help him or her diagnose that, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so
If you know,
anything, any piece of advice would you like to give to the
Parent,
parents first?
parents, and
so
also that 8-year-old who might be dyslexic and is watching this,
yeah,
Yeah,
who
so
might feel that
if
the world
it's
is against them. Yeah.
correct.
So what? How
yes,
can what kind of advice will you give to him?
so to parents, I'd probably say, how would I say it to parents? Just be encouraging, try and ensure that the kid takes responsibility of it and ownership of it and tries to do everything in their power to overcome that obstacle and understands that it's not something that can't be overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And also try and embrace those differences. If everyone wasn't, if everyone was the same, I think the world would be a bit boring. So, just try and embrace those differences.
Absolutely.
And then for the 8-year-olds, don't allow it to give you an excuse to be lazy or imagine that you can't do things.
Very important.
Make sure to give everything your best shot. Understand that you learn differently and try and find and overcome, and find ways to actually learn in a way that's beneficial for you. And then just do whatever you want.
Nice.
That's about it.
That's
try and read.
That's a great
try
piece
and
of
do some
advice.
maths. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not limiting yourself. What I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so now I'll do something which every Indian does when he or she talks to a foreigner. I'll make you say some words in Hindi before we go. Right? That is, see, so when we are born in India, right? So we have an Aadhaar. So you have the BRP here, we have the Aadhaar card. So Aadhaar card is our identification. And a part of being an Indian is making foreigners speak in Hindi. Right. That stems right from our Prime Minister to everybody. Everybody does that.
Oh no.
So you
Swami
have to go to the
Vivek
task.
Anand.
Yeah, you have to go through the task of speaking a bit. And if you want to know the best Hindi, go to Donald Trump speaking Hindi, you'll know.
Yes.
Right? So I'll give you the tough task of embarrassing yourself of speaking Hindi. So you have to basically say that please do watch our podcast. Okay, it was nice talking. No, not in English.
No, I wasn't going to. I'm going to do it in English.
It was a great conversation. Please do watch our podcast. So how do you say it? So basically, it was a great conversation with Ayush and Sanket, and please do watch our podcast. So how do you say it? Is that Ayush? Say Ayush.
Ayush.
Sanket से.
संकेत से.
बहुत ज़्यादा. बहुत ज़्यादा चालाक और सुंदर है. That's all. Let's end it. Thank you.
Hey, see, I can speak that.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you what. If ever I come back on this podcast, I'm going to learn a bit more Hindi and then
So Ayush, say once more, just for the Ayush. संकेत से बहुत ज़्यादा चालाक और सुंदर है. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And that's it. Let me end it right now.